Everyone, please welcome QuHarrison Terry and DJ Skee, the co-authors of the Metaverse Handbook.
Hey.
Yo, what up, what up, what up, what up?
Hey.
Yo.
What's up?
Good to see everybody.
Awesome.
This is awesome.
It's great to be here.
Yes, yes, yes.
This is such a great event. Thank you guys for coming out. And big shout to the Silicon Slopes team. It's just such an incredible experience, too. It's my first time at this event, so.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, this is my first time really spending a lot of time in just Utah. And you all got to make some noise for yourself because I've had a heck of an experience. The hospitality is unrivaled.
The tech scene here is incredible. There's so many cool businesses. And just, you know what, more importantly than the business and the companies here is really the people and the energy. That's what I've been so impressed by out here. Like, you really feel a vibe, and there's something in the air, right? Or something in the slope.
Yeah, something's in the air. Like, the air is thinner. Like, I've been like...
Maybe that's it. Maybe
I can't, like...
a little...
I've been trying to adjust, and my senses is just... It's not allergies. It's the air is, like, thin.
I love it. I love it. It's awesome.
All right, the elevation, I guess.
It's true.
So, Skee,
yes.
It was about this time last year that I hit you up, and I was like, hey, you want to be an author?
Yeah, and we made it happen. So Q has always been, just for a little background in him, this hustler, right? So I remember, what was it, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Literally almost like 10 years ago.
You were doing video games.
Last month, I was doing a launch for Assassin's Creed, I think it was, in Chicago. And Q was he was from Wisconsin, came out, and he was, by the way, like emailing me and DMing me back in the day every day. And I think it was before like Instagram and stuff. So it was probably like what?
This was like Twitter, like
so
OG
like,
Twitter.
OG Twitter, like DMing me just like this annoying kid every day, but was so persistent. And he actually showed up at one of these events. I was like, come down, and he drove down from Wisconsin. And now, like, to watch his career evolve, he wrote a book called the NFT Handbook a couple years ago. And when I started jumping heavy in the Metaverse scene, I was doing these DJ sets, right, in Oculus, but using it more as a performance tool,
right.
And basically bringing in, streaming it live and allowing consumers to interact with it. So if you were watching it, you'd be able to send like a Giphy link, and it would change the entire background. It was the funnest DJ set I did, and I do like stadiums, sporting events. It's like my day job, right? Like doing big arenas like this all the time. But like I had more fun in the Metaverse because I was like, oh wow, I'm not limited by like gravity. I can fly and I can go to the ceiling, and more importantly, like consumers can interact with me, right? Like they can actually have a say. They can change the background on my, like they'd send a Giphy link and the whole background would change. And it created moments where they'd send like everything from like scenes from The Office, right? And I'd be like, oh, Michael Scott's here. And it was just really cool. But Q like encouraged me to lean in on that. And long story short, like I went crazy in the Metaverse and started working on a bunch of other projects, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it was actually you that helped like push me to get into this, and that's why it's so funny we came together for this book.
That's crazy because I remember that conversation. Now that you bring it up, like I think I came to your new DAS office, and I like walked in with the headset, and I was like, "Yo, like, did you get an Oculus?" It was the Go at the time, And you were like, I guess. And then about a year later, I saw you just virtual DJ in the Metaverse, and you did a conference in the Metaverse.
Yeah, we did a whole conference, and I mean, like, look, COVID, like many things, right? It was almost the best thing to happen for this because it accelerated this trend that was already happening. Like this was going to be inevitable, but it just took it off like warp speed. And for me, right, like I'm used to being on the road. Like I'm like platinum status on 5 airlines, right? Like I'm barely home at all. So I'm used to being on the road. And all of a sudden I was stuck at home. It like took away all of my lifeline, like physical events, sporting events, DJing events and all that. So I was forced kind of by trial by fire, right? Like thrown into this mix to figure out what to do. And I didn't want to do like we did on the Dash side, my company, we had a partnership with Twitch. We did, I think, like 600 live streams during the pandemic.
Wow.
Everybody from Deadmau5, Cascade, and Snoop to you name it, up and coming artist. But to me, just like putting a video on of somebody like DJing, right? Like it's not that exciting. That's why music concerts have never historically really worked well on like videos and things, right? Because the music concerts are about you want to be there and feel the vibe and feel the energy. And so that's where I dove so deep in the Metaverse and was just like, how do we like make experiences that are fun, right? And
I mean, you literally did that. Like Paris World, before I get into that, I actually want to talk to the audience a little bit. I mean, I want a little bit of engagement, y'all. So I'm going to put a QR code on the screen because I'm going to talk about this book. And if you don't have this book right here, I'm going to make it easily, not the violin verse, we're not going to get there yet, but I'm going to put the Metaverse Handbook on the stage. There we go. So if you need, you can get the book for yourself on Amazon. That QR code will take you there. But I want to talk about, in the meantime, how many people are familiar with the metaverse, or at least heard of it?
It still kind of slaps. Everybody's heard of it.
I mean, it's about 70%. Like, just
That's
like
true,
looking at
true.
it.
And that just shows how early we are, though. That's like the first thing, right? Like, even though there's almost been like, it went from like being nothing to all of a sudden, especially with Meta, we were talking about this being almost overhyped, right? Like a lot of the technology still...
It's a buzzword.
Still isn't really there. Yeah, and it's also become like, for us, I know at least from my perspective, it's almost annoying, right? I'm like, oh, we wrote the Metaverse Handbook. And we were writing this before it became that, and now we're like...
It takes a while to write a book. And so like... You have to, so this is the thing that before we get into the book, how this book came to be is, yes, I was annoying Skee. I was that guy. So if anybody's in the crowd and you want to you see somebody and you want to connect with them, be persistent. But the one advice I would have is every time you get an interaction with them, actually add value. I mean, the first time I met, you were just meet me at this event. I showed up, I got a photo, and that was about it. Yeah. And then several months later, and years apart, it kept cascading. Yeah. Eventually, I hit him up and I was like, "Yo, I think we should write a book together." Yeah. And I think the metaverse is going to be huge. And here's my reasoning for it. And I really saw it as the evolution to the internet. Yeah. If you have a phone, and I'm sure you do because you just scan this QR code, what you've realized is that there's not much more evolution here.
I mean, the new iPhone, if you look at it, even Apple sales numbers, their stock took a tumble because there was less demand for it. It can't really get that much better. It's at a certain point where it's almost plateaued. There'll be incremental improvements every year, but it's just at a phase where it went through hyper growth, and each year it was oh, this has all these features. Now you're oh, it's a better camera.
And so knowing that, we're going to the spatial web. The internet is going to go from something that is largely experienced on 2D devices to something that is immersive. And that immersive definition is what we're trying to determine right now. Yeah. That's what Meta's jumping in the game, and they're trying to define it from their horizon. Sure. no pun
literally.
intended. And then you've got Roblox, you've got Spatial, you've got Fortnite. And the thing I hate about the metaverse right now is the buzzword is attached largely to video games. Yeah. No one's talking about some of the innovative things that are happening alongside, Complex Con.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they did a whole festival in the metaverse for culture, right? And had big performers. And yes, it was still glitchy. It's not there, but they're making a try, right? It was a different experience, especially when we were all at home. That's why I think COVID allowed this space to really, accelerate a lot quicker and get to where we are, which probably might have happened 5 years from now if it wasn't for that.
And it's good. It brought a lot of innovators together.
Yeah.
And so we define what we think of the metaverse and where it's going. The thing that I want to do today on stage with you all is really just give a glimpse of some of the innovators and creators that we see in the metaverse, because the book will tell you some of the platforms, what our thoughts are. Skee, you have a lot of thoughts on the metaverse as it relates to the different variants.
I'll talk all day on that.
Yeah, I mean, your opinions on blockchain-based metaverses, the metaverse doesn't really need a blockchain.
I think at the end of the day, all these terms, even when we talk about NFTs, and you wrote the NFT handbook, these are utility tools. We need to get away from using those things. We don't say, hey, I listened to that new MP3 from Sam Smith, right? You're I listened to his new song, right? And that just happened to be the MP3 is the distribution mechanism. Yeah. And I think look, and rightfully so, there's been a lot of public backlash from people that are doubters. And there's been a lot of ammo that they have against, monkey JPEGs for selling for $500,000, land in this virtual real estate that Mark Zuckerberg owns, right? These scenes haven't done themselves any favors with publicity. So now is the time where we need to focus on actually building meaningful things, using the benefits of this technology, but doing it in a way that it shouldn't be it should just be this is a great experience.
I love that. And you're talking about building. And what I want to tell everybody here is when you think about the great technological revolutions that have been had, it's never the incumbents, the big Microsofts, the IBMs, the Dells, the AT&Ts. They never build that transformative gateway, right? Dell did, but when they became the incumbent, they didn't. Michael Dell literally did. But when I think about Mark Zuckerberg, when he was in his dorm room and he was working amongst his friends, and they said, "Okay, let's make Facebook." They made that happen because they didn't have all the baggage of a publicly traded company with them.
Yeah.
They could pivot. You could try things, and like the scrutiny that you have, it just didn't exist then.
100%.
Right now, all of the creators in here, no matter what you do, you can try to do something in the metaverse, build it, and learn from it, and keep going through the loop.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone is doing one metaverse thing and making a hit, except for Travis Scott.
Yeah, and like when you look at the metaverse today, we get brands all the time approaching us, and people, even like artists saying, hey, I want to get in the metaverse. First up, what is the metaverse? They want to know. And so like, all right, here's what it is. But then they're like, what do I do? How do I get in the metaverse? I'm like, all right, here's your options if you want to be 100% real. You can go to Roblox, but it's all little kids.
Yes.
You can go to Fortnite, but you can't monetize it really yet.
Right.
You can go in Decentraland, but it's not really populated.
Yes.
You can build your own and spend a ton of money, but how are you going to drive traffic there? So we're like in this space where you really don't have many options, which is good and bad. Like from businesses that expect to like generate profit and come in for the quick cash grabs, this is not the time for you. Who it is, though, for is people that want to test things out and innovate and be there early when this pendulum shifts. And when you look at Mark Zuckerberg, he's saying, and he's spending $70 billion. And by the way, yeah, they're an incumbent that's trying to do that. He's saying, what, a 10-year horizon that this could take? Like, but it's going to be like an iPhone. Remember when the iPhone came out, not everybody had one. And
I mean, BlackBerry was the booming phone of choice, unless you had a sidekick.
Steve Ballmer with the famous quote, right? Like, the iPhone's not going to be anything. Like, that's literally what people thought at the time, and that's like seems so silly now, but like that's where we are. And like all of a sudden, there wasn't like a specific day; it just happened.
It did. Now, the thing that is fascinating about that is the creators. You know, I still think one of the most mind-blowing things to ever happen in the metaverse is the creators that decided to sell screenshots or screen recordings, because there are literally people that are making thousands of dollars daily, and all they're doing literally is they've gotten good at screen recording, because there is no tool right now that allows you to go into a metaverse environment, takes away the different UI elements, and get actual footage. And the people that have gotten good at that, they've built custom rigs, or they like have their own proprietary solution for replacing images. And like, it's kind of funny because they're literally making money just in their like, you know how you take a screenshot? They just take a screenshot.
And it shows like one easy thing that I always talk to people about the metaverse is it blows my mind. It's like in my perspective, right? And by the way, this will probably all be wrong in like 5 years as it evolves, right? But like what we've learned from experiences running things with like Paris Hilton and Roblox and all these different like metaverse style experiences is that it's very similar to the real world. The same way that you have a photographer set up and they need the right cameras, the right lighting. That's what you're talking about right now. It's a metaverse photographer. And we see it like when we do Paris World, right? When she jumps in the game with her avatar, guess what the top thing people do and kids do is?
Screenshot.
They gather around her, and it's wild. This is a virtual avatar. They gather around her, and they ask in the chat, they say, can I take a selfie with you? The selfie is a screenshot. But they ask, too. It's not like a digital thing. And then you'll see, like, all these kids, like 100 people will gather around the same place, and then one person will take leadership. Hey, guys, stand to the left, stand to the right so we can all pose. All right, say cheese. Did everybody get your selfie? It's like the same thing that would happen if she was walking the street and a bunch of people bombarded her. It's just in a different environment. And that's why I've always said the metaverse is really like, we look at LA, New York, Paris, Miami, Utah, right? Like the metaverse is another one just with different, rules.
I agree with that, like wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And if I were a creator today, I would literally find like a physical like skill set that can translate. Like filmmaking translates.
Totally.
Photography translates. You can name something. I mean, like art. Sports.
Music. DJing. Right?
DJing. Like literally, that's the aha moment that I'm trying to like have happen in this room today. Is that no matter what you do, you can take it to the metaverse.
And here's what I love about that. And you're starting to see early games like with virtual reality. If you're a baseball player, there's a game where you can you don't need a pitching machine. Like so when I was growing up, right? Like if I wanted to play baseball, I could hit off a tee, play video games, or try to find a friend, and he probably wasn't that good to throw me pitches. Now I can go in Oculus and actually get Max Scherzer or whoever throwing me a fastball at 98 miles an hour and see what it's like and get practice. I can play football and see what it's like with linemen breathing down my throat and do that. Same thing, DJing. When I started DJing, right, like I had to steal one of my dad's turntables. It wasn't like a DJ turntable.
Yeah.
It was a belt drive one because it was too expensive. I could afford one. I couldn't afford the second. Now with an Oculus, right, like a $200 device, a $300 device, I can buy an app for $40 and I get a $5,000 DJing in value of a DJing system that's one-to-one of the exact same like Pioneer CDJ system that I can now experiment with without trying. And by the way, I can try loads of different equipment. So that's when I look at the metaverse, and like these are real world use cases that you can actually apply, and one of the reasons that I'm such a big fan of it, because it really democratizes things that otherwise a lot of people were priced out, the same way that internet did with information.
So, you know, what's funny is I wanted to like see how real, like I went to flight school, and so I wanted to see how real it is to actually fly in the metaverse versus like real life. The simulations are really good. Like
that's why pilots do them in real world, right?
Yeah, it's like if you buy all the equipment, it's 1-to-1, and the cost of the equipment is much cheaper than buying a plane.
I remember we did something on my TV show once. We went to a flight simulator with a couple artists to do like war games, and it was like super expensive and very low res, and now you can with Flight Simulator like recreate these things
for less than $500, like all in.
100%.
That's with the headset and all the. I mean, you need a computer, of course, but like. That's saying that if you don't have the computer, it's a little bit more. But like, there's people I want to talk about, like CK Bubbles. She's a nail tech. How many people in here have been to like a spa or know like people that do nails? Like anybody? Okay, I see people. Some people are being honest up there. There's a person that sells nail art in the metaverse. Yeah. They've gotten good at it. They do it in the real world, and they said, hey, like I can't design nails every single day. 365 and sell that, like it's just impossible, but like I can extend it to the metaverse.
100%.
And the crazy thing is like when you go into Decentraland and you look at, you know, this is what I do love about the blockchain is like you can verify if someone
100%.
is saying and doing the numbers that they actually are doing.
100%.
You can see that she's growing, and
that's one of the great things about the metaverse, right? Like it cuts out like a lot of the BS that we've seen with social media. Like I believe in the future, our bios are not going to be like something that we write ourselves on Twitter. It's going to be a link to your ETH wallet. It'll show tickets of events that you've gone to. It'll show, oh, they're into tech. They went to Silicon Slopes. They went to a jazz game. They're into basketball, right?
Let's talk about that. So you are known as a collector.
Yeah.
Like I think even like 10 years ago, you were like one of the largest sneaker collectors in the world, right?
I have way too much. Don't even,
Like you were though. It was one of those things where like, you know, you built it was like a parallel brand that you had, and like I remember there was a museum in Vegas that like I could go see part of your collection.
Yeah, more kids. It's funny for all the work that I like laid in foundation and music and all like the hard hours and work. More kids know me probably from my Complex Kicks episodes and all my sneaker collection, which is wild.
I mean, it's insane, but like we now live in a world where the what we call in the book the phygital, where you have a physical good and a digital like equivalent of that, whether it be an NFT or some other format, they coexist. And in that existence as a collect, like you're the mega collector. Like if I was to like make a persona for a collector, it's like it's probably the Skee. It's like this guy collects everything.
From NFTs to physical items to shoot, you name it, right?
Yeah. Like you have it. And so like, what do you think about like if 10 years ago we had NFTs and you were collecting shoes, you would have like this crazy
100%
like wallet that had all of the sneakers and kicks that you bought. What would that world look like to you?
I think there's a couple things, and this is one of the great uses of blockchain, right? Like, I mean, first up, you can go to the metaverse and experience it and show it off, and everybody can do it.
Right.
I have like one of my favorite items is Dr. Dre's plaque from the Chronic and Doggy Style. It's a 5-foot plaque. He signed it and gave it to me, which is like sitting there. It's awesome.
Right.
But maybe 100 people will see it. Only the people that ever physically come to my house. How cool would it be if I could walk in the metaverse experience and everybody could witness and do that and then see the provenance? It's like donating to a museum that somebody else owns it. But here's where I get really excited. If you look at like sneakers specifically and collectible memorabilia and signatures, there's so much fraud out there. Anytime that something becomes successful, there's a ton of different frauds. So imagine like in a world where Michael Jordan's game-used jersey from the 97 finals, game 1, just sold 2 weeks ago for $10 million.
Golly.
So, and that's because it's like photo verified, but the value in that is not the item itself, because there's a million Michael Jordan jerseys. It's because he wore it. But more importantly, it's only valuable because of that authentication. And today, all that is a certificate, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a notary signed and however it was acquired. the blockchain is the perfect use case because you can serialize those things. You can put it on the blockchain. You can see the provenance, and it actually, you could see, like, tie it with the photos. It's like the ultimate certificate of authentication.
What I love about that is you just demonstrated what it means to be a future thinker, in the sense that, like, you took one of your interests, you geeked out about it, but then you were like, hey, there's a lot of things that I can't solve today. Like, people say, well, how do you tie the digital certificate to the physical good? We haven't figured that out yet. But I think it will be figured out within the next 5 to 10 years. And when that happens, it's the future thinkers like you that have thought what is possible that allows us to actually experience that in 10 years. Because you're going to build all the things, and then when that one trend or when that one thing unlocks, well, all the potential is there.
We're seeing it. Another great example of that, like we mentioned sneakers, right? Like, to me, I have such a big sneaker collection. There's so much fraud in sneakers. A lot of the innovation, though, in that space has happened from somebody from Utah, right?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, Chris is in the audience. Artifact,
like, literally.
Like, Artifact is like one of the biggest.
Cool, like, and I'm not just saying this because he's here. By the way, Chris, like, is such a grinder. Like, he used to design my MySpace page back in the day, and now no, for real. That's why I had the dopest MySpace page and mixtape covers. So huge shout to Chris. It's been awesome watching his career grow, and now he's like running innovation and design at Nike. Headlining speaker here. One of the most successful. Utah Zone, which is incredible. Make some noise for Chris one time. We got to get it up for him. But what's so cool about what he's doing with Artifact, and why it's one of my favorite projects, is because they're doing, these forgeable NFTs. Like, I bought so much stuff. I've spent so much money on your stuff, Chris. It's not even funny, right? Like, because now I'm getting these sneakers that, and I'm equally as interested, not only in the physical pair, and I need to see the thing that you revealed yesterday, but the actual digital pairs of it, of what I can wear for my avatar. So one thing that I'm working on, there's a project that I'm involved in called TSX. This thing is insane. It's the biggest development in the history of Times Square, over a $2.5 billion project. We're basically building a destination for pop culture in the busiest intersection in North America, anchored by the highest resolution billboard and screen in the world. In the middle of the screen, a 2-story stage pops up. We have The Weeknd and Post Malone as some of our investors. And think of, like, when they release an album today, there's not really a place for pop culture moments. Now they can perform for 400,000 people in Times Square and create the biggest moment that goes viral socially, etc. But I joined them to start looking at what that looks like digitally, and how we also leverage the screen 24/7. We can't have artists there all the time. So one thing that I'm doing, and I haven't even told you this, Chris, is that I'm actually taking my CloneX avatar and turning him into a host, into a personality. So what he's wearing in those shoes that I've bought for myself and I'm forging are actually going to be represented on my character. So now when I buy a pair of sneakers, I'm not just wearing it in the real world, and I know that they're real, they're not fake or anything else. I can bring them on my digital character. And in this world, what we're seeing with Roblox, and the reason that anybody that has a kid here between the ages of 8 to 13, you know what your Roblox charges and those Exola charges are on your credit card statements, right? So, like, it's more important what you look like virtually, and that's what's so cool about projects like this that bridge the gap from that. And that's why I'm so bullish on them specifically too.
So for the audience, in TSX, it's not out yet, but if I wanted to participate in this massive billboard that you're working on, because I live in the digital verse too. How would what should we follow? How can we get a part of it?
So we're going to make some big announcements later this year. We're going live with the billboard around New Year's. It's going to be the first time it turns on. Our full building won't be ready for a little bit until probably next year sometime. But it's going to be, you guys will definitely see it. It's one of the most interesting projects I've ever worked on. We're not selling space on the billboard. We're only utilizing it for projects that we have. And it's the first project, and probably the largest Web3 project in the history of anything, right? Like, it's a $2.85 billion project built from day one with Web3 in mind, with the Metaverse in mind. We're going to be doing drops across the spectrum, so it's just going to be phenomenal. And it's so cool to see, like, companies, and this is backed by, some of the biggest financial firms in the world, allowing, and, like, I'm still shocked that they're letting me, like, run with this as Chief Metaverse Officer and, like, literally take this project and build. I think the digital component is actually going to be far more valuable simply because it scales more. I can reach anybody. You can be here in Salt Lake City and watch whatever's happening in Times Square, even though it's awesome that there'll be all those people there. That's just not scalable infinitely.
That's fair. I love that you're building. I'm
trying to be like you, Q. You're always hustling and finding something else.
I mean, hey, did you see The Violinist?
Are they ready for it?
I don't think they're ready for it, but I hope she's queued up. When we got here, we were like, what should we talk about? What's the future of the metaverse? We get that question probably every day, like several times a day, right? And I wanted to do something at Silicon Slope Summit that was unique. And so we're going to take the bottom half of this presentation, and we're going to actually show you what's possible. Everything you see, Skee and I and John from Silicon Summit over there, or Silicon Slopes, my apologies.
Oh, there he is.
Silicon
What's up, John? I
Slopes.
didn't even see you.
See him out there. He said, yeah, you can do it.
By the way, we put this together at 10 o'clock last night in the hotel lobby?
Yeah, so I'm only showing you this because you can do things like this in the metaverse today. You just have to show up, build an interest, and be a geek about it. The stuff, you can figure it out, trust me. We're going to bring out Clover.
And this is like no cost. This is like us just doing things, experimenting.
We're just experimenting.
Like literally last night, just for fun, like, hey, let's show them something different.
Yeah, like literally that was that. And so we built a metaverse. You're going to see it here soon. But I thought that, Lindsay Sterling, the violinist, so I didn't know she was from Utah.
Of course.
And so then I was like,
Utah's got talent.
Utah's got like a lot of talent. And so I was like, oh, okay, like there's a Utah Lindsay Sterling connection. Yeah. I know a dope violinist. Like, how about we try to let's just take a violinist and build the violin verse and like make some magic happen.
Why not?
So we're gonna call out Clover the Violinist, and we're gonna show you what's possible in the metaverse today. If you're an artist or a creator of any type, you can literally have your own live metaverse, and we're gonna get into that now. Clover, where are you?
And that's part of this is you just have to dive in and to do it, right? Like it's experimenting and testing and tinkering, and that's how great things are born.
Yeah. So we're gonna make
on stage. Or we can see some of the metaverse right now behind us.
Yeah, so we can see that. But I think we should have her in person if she.
Hold on, I'll go grab her. I'll go find where she is. Hold on.
Oh wait! I think she's coming out.
We got her?
I think so.
There we go. Come on out, Clover.
In 2022, we like to call it a new specimen.
I told him in the beginning.
There we go.
I never thought that I'd be making money making digital items that don't exist. It's literally an artist's dream, and I'm living it. Shout out Nikki like. Fuego like Nikki. I never thought I'd be making these bitches. I take a player and make them exquisite. Dress them up, dress them down, I'm getting busy. I'm getting cheddar. Took me a second, but I'm getting better. Shareable wearables, I'm a big stepper. Strolling the runway, I do it so better. I'm
Different.
stylish. Justin Debbie is actually violence. I wreak havoc each time I walk in. Got them reaching like gravity calling. Sevens I'm hauling. Rolling the dice cool. Remember bragging and bagging in high school. I had shoes that most couldn't tie loose. Now they study my moves like it's night school. I'm really like that. 40,000 and that's just a nightcap. 100 DMs and I cannot write back. Doing this for them girls who still type back. I'm really like that. 40,000 and that's just a flight check. 100,000 and that's just a style check. Thought I told them that I'm really like that. Fuego like Nikki. I never thought I'd be making these bitches. I take a player and make them exquisite. Dress them up, dress them down, I'm getting busy. I'm getting cheddar. Took me a second, but I'm getting better. Shareable wearables, I'm a big stepper. Strolling the runway, I do it so better.
Look no further than Krista Kim, the contemporary artist who made headlines for designing the Mars house and selling it as an NFT for over 288 Ethereum, which at the time was over $500,000
I just
US
hit a
dollars.
lick for half a mil. I feel like Krista Kim. Might be deja vu. I'm about to go and do that slick can. Do the movements how we about to make the block spin. Put it on my quote and I'm synonymous to top 10. I just hit a lick for half a mil. I feel like Krista Kim. Might be deja vu. I'm about to go and do that slick can. Do the movements how we about to make the block spin. Put it on my quote and I'm synonymous to top 10. I just got a new crib. Felt like 2 cribs. I just moved in. Put the lab inside the bedroom. Don't need legroom. Leave me headroom. I be cooking when I'm sleeping. I be cooking on the wake up. I be talking to my life cause everything was activated. Like this pieces take my place. Waking up and giving thanks. My whole life autonomous. Money clean as laundering. Seldom ring is bothering. DJs and be calming me. I might go alone again. Drop another bomb on them. been wide since a legit. When we would play Nintendo game 64-bit. And remote the only thing I could control. Now I'm playing with the world. I just hit a leap and had the mill. I feel like Chris the King. Might be deja vu about to go and do that they can. We was with the movements, how we about to make the block spin. Put it on my coat and I'm synonymous to top 10. I just hit a leap and had the mill. I feel like Chris the King. Might be deja vu about to go and do that they can. We was with the movements, how we about to make the block spin. Put it on my coat and I'm synonymous to top 10.
If you want to learn more about Krista Kim and the Metaverse, check out page 5 in the Metaverse Handbook. It's available anywhere books are sold.
Okay.
Here we go. Give it up one time for Clover. Thank you, Clover.
So, I mean, Clover, you have your own metaverse.
I do.
How does it feel?
It's awesome. Like, it's nothing I ever foresaw when I started this journey. So to reach this point and understand that this was something I could actually do, I absolutely had to take advantage of that. So.
And
So for new artists, if you look at this, right, like, and this is just something, again, thrown together in hours without motion tracking, just putting up video and incorporating this. But if you're an artist, now you can build your own world, right? Like all of these things from the background design, the design of the building, and this is all like very basic spatial stuff that anyone in this room, I believe, could do on their own right now. You have an opportunity to not only introduce what your music sounds and looks like and put like the right visuals over it, as you see with Clover and then the clouds and the sunset, but now you have the ability to like build your brand and showcase what your environment looks like. As we know with artists, the music is less than 50% of the importance of breaking, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
The time that we live in, it's all about your brand and your social media and things like that, and this is kind of the next evolution of this. So this is why we wanted to show something, just to say like, hey, if you're an artist, no matter what you're doing, like, you can start building brand and experimenting and doing these things on your own today. Granted, like, yes, it still looks relatively rudimental and things.
Well, check this out. If we show the QR code now, like everybody in here can actually go visit this. This is live right now. You just scan the code or go to violinverse.com.
Yeah.
And like, what's funny is all those people that are, like you talked about, being in the spatial environment, they all can join and they can see it.
So you didn't have to be here in Salt Lake City if you couldn't make it for whatever reason, or if you're from anywhere else in the world, you can participate in the summit in a different way. And that's what the metaverse is to me, ultimately. It's scaling experiences, bringing things together, and bringing together a global community in a way that could never be done just because of geographic locations, physics, fire marshals, right? Like,
yeah.
Now we can all get together in one room and connect.
And the cool thing about it is it's 24/7, right? Like, you can put, and now when you can see that there's people, I'm watching the thing and there's people in there. That's like crazy, right? And like
jumping around. And this is literally like thrown together. And
just thrown together like, a couple hours. And we were just like, hey, we have this idea, let's go for it. The point that I think is awesome too is like all those are violins that you designed.
Yes, so these are all 3D renders, but we are looking into the phases of 3D printing these instruments and really bringing these creations to life so that they can be usable, they can be playable in 3D.
And that's helping build in Clover's brand, right? Like, she's able to showcase what she is as an artist. It's much like being an artist is more than being one thing.
Right.
Anybody will tell you, you kind of do it all, right? Like, you have this vision, and it's more than just music. And I think this reflects, you can show so much more of who you are versus just an MP3 file and trying to, especially right now, it's almost a hack to stand out.
Yeah.
Because everybody can do music. Like, recording is so easy. In this, not many people are doing it, though, even though everybody can jump in.
Seriously, if I was a musician, I would go get a metaverse and dude, I would do everything in my metaverse. All my Spotify drops, my YouTube drops, my Apple Music drops, my concerts.
Yeah.
Because you're getting that information.
Yeah.
Like, you see some of the artists that are really thriving today, they have first party data. They can text all their fans. They can say, I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, that's that. So Clover, thank you so much. Where can people find you, by the way?
Yes, currently you all can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Clover the Violinist. You can also visit my website at cloverviolin.com to get more background on me and to follow my journey.
Alrighty, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. One of the aha moments that I had that I knew the metaverse was going to be a real thing was after we launched Paris Hilton's world in Roblox. And remember, Paris Hilton's 40 years old, right? Like, not the target demo for that. And somebody that, is one of the biggest and most well-known figures in the world. We did a full like New Year's Eve showcase and highlight with her. And the ultimate thing was getting a voice note from her the next day. She was on vacation in time, and I think in Bora Bora or somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So she literally sent me a note. She was on it all night, like playing her own world. And this is where fans were coming up to her. It was like the ultimate party. And I remember like one of my first big New Year's gigs as a DJ is like 2007. I was in Vegas opening up some club with Paris, right? And like she's the biggest star in the world, gets to go VIP anywhere that she goes. So it's far different than the life that we live. But she was like, oh my God, I never in a million years thought I'd be having fun partying on the internet in a digital party, but it was actually more fun than partying in the real world. All the outfits everybody was wearing was wild. I loved seeing it. And one thing that if you know about Roblox, it's not, they're just not just wearing like, and in the real world, right? Like I have a black shirt under this, Q's got a black hoodie, like we're wearing muted things. Yeah. In Roblox, it's the opposite. The things that sell aren't like the black shirts. It's like the most colorful things with wings. So she was blown away by the decor, and that's how you express yourself in this. But also she had fun just interacting and hanging with people. And I was like, wow, if somebody that didn't grow up natively doing it, the way that kids are growing up now, is saying that this is the future of partying. And again, she can go to any party, any event, and have a far better experience than us because they open the velvet rope and give her anything she wants for free. But she had more fun in that. And she's like, by the way, I can do this from Bora Bora or anywhere else. I don't have to deal with makeup, flying somewhere, going to events. If I can do this to interact and hang with my fans, and her fans had such a good time, like she's like, this is where I want to be. And that's why she's like, to her credit, has had like so much success in Web3 and NFTs because she's partnered with up and coming brands, even when like Artifact was launching, right? Like she did her own, shoe that now is her first Nike collab. Now she's known as Queen of the Metaverse just because she like experimented early on.
No, I agree with that. And one thing I would add to that is it works for Paris Hilton, but it also works for Nikki Fuego.
Yes.
Right? Like, yeah. Nikki Fuego is just a server, a waitress. And she says, hey, I'm going to check out this Metaverse thing, and starts throwing drag shows literally in Decentraland. And over time, starts to build a following, and now she's a household name in in Decentraland at least. And it's like one of those things where like she's throwing shows, like think about that. Like throwing a party is like, I mean, we both have thrown massive parties and events and been a part of them.
It's a pain. John will attest, it's a tough throwing an event. It's expensive. It takes a lot of time. A million things go wrong. Like
now, with one click of a button, you can like host an event with several hundred people in it.
And by the way, reach way more people long term just because you're not limited.
And the organization, like, they've got portals and like, just like you can use anything that's on the web. You can bring that to life. Like, I don't think people realize how exciting some of these things are. And like the innovators that are required to like really win tomorrow are going to be people that just really get good at just making the connections.
Yeah. Right? And if you look at like, in real life, events are never going away. There's nothing that can replace us all being here and those physical connections. That's one thing that we also learned in COVID, right? Like that's crystal clear. But we also learned that we can't always be there. And that's where things like Zoom came in and took over like conference calls, right? Like a lot of those things have evolved. So and that's where I think the metaverse is, right? Like I don't think it will ever replicate. Like I don't believe in a future where we just like strap in our brains and stuff and like we're all gone, right? And not living in the real world. But there's moments where you can't fly out, you can't do these things. And like, I think that it's just basically, another opportunity to interact with these events, right? Like Silicon Slops will always be here. It will always be physical. There'll always be some physical element. But how awesome would it be if we could include so many other people that aren't in Salt Lake or that can't make it out?
That's true.
To share their things from across the world. And that's where it becomes really interesting and fun.
All right, Skee. I have to ask you this question because people on Twitter keep asking me this question. So I figure I'm going to pass it to you. You ready for it? It's going to be one of the final questions. How do you make money in the metaverse?
Good question. I think if you're thinking of that today, if that's your goal, you probably shouldn't be spending a ton of time being real, right? Like, there's only a couple ways. As we talked about the platforms, like Roblox, you sell digital goods, they still keep 70%. Fortnite, you can enter creator codes and monetize, but it's not a great monetization scheme. Decentraland, not really enough people to make anything of scale. You can go work with a brand if you have an audience and figure and have them underwrite and stuff. So, you can still make money from branded goods. You can make a little bit from virtual goods. If you can make a big hit, you can do those things. But I think we're still a little ways off from that. I think that how you also tie physical items in is going to be wildly important. And that's one thing that I'm experimenting with and that we're going to be launching on the Dash side soon, and like tying in, as you talked about, collectibles that exist in real life and digitally. But from your perspective, like, what would your answer be, since everybody's asking you?
So you took like the creator side. I'm going to take the retail side. So if I'm a retailer or if I have a store, shout out to John Stan. John Stan, he made the hats for Silicon Slopes, and they're pretty fire. But if I was John Stan and I had a Shopify store and I was like, all right, how do I go in the metaverse? I don't have any technical skills. This is not my domain. I make physical goods. I would start doing pop-ups in the metaverse. Like 100%. I would go figure out who has an audience in Decentraland and be like, let me design the hat. And they're going to know somebody that can digitize this, because there's so many people like in the last 6 months that know how to make 3D objects. So like find the people that are doing things in Decentraland's Roblox, Spatial, where there's so many different places. Yeah. Find them, go underground, get to it, and do pop-ups. You don't have to put these things on your homepage. You don't even have to talk about them on your Instagram. Just give it support, because that's what's missing is like real world brands. Like when Nike supported Artifact, that shifted the whole Web3 community, because it was possible to see a real world brand create utility for something that we all watch manifest 100%. Digitally. And so that's what I would do if I was a young creator, is just try to find, young creator, try to find the retailers that will do pop-ups and just design them, and go to the retailers with Shopify stores and say, hey, I know I can drive 100 sales. Yeah. And there's no director or CMO that's going to be like, okay, because you're going to make them look good. They don't care about the 100 sales, but the fact that they did something in the metaverse, that's mind-blowing.
It's experimentation right now for it, right? And you're almost seeing brands just come in now just to be there, right? And we see it and we get it. We're building worlds for a lot of these people. But when brands come to me and what should we do? If there's a bank, right? And they're like, we want to be in the metaverse. I'm like, should we open a branch? I'm like, no. Unless you're giving away money, why would anybody go there when they can fly and go in a rocket, right? Those things don't make sense. You have to figure out what your value is, or go find great creators and sponsor experiences that are there. And now we're seeing so many brands jump in. With Roblox, every day there's 10 new brands that are being announced. Same with Fortnite. It's all right, how many people are really going to go to these different islands or worlds and kids? I mean, you can buy paid traffic for it, but they'll come once. What is that real brand value? Go to stuff that's meaningful and that's already exists with the creators, and dip your toes in the water.
Last point. If I had 30 seconds and I was like, give me an idea that anyone can do in the metaverse, I would go figure out how to sell the advertising space in the metaverse, because that is a huge opportunity. It's a manual job, the same way Facebook ads were a manual in 2012. If you got good at brokering deals with brands, especially with the NIL landscape that is ongoing, you could make decent money, and you could actually build some really powerful relationships, because the creators today in the metaverse are the future Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerbergs, and Jeff Bezos.
We're in the Wild West right now. It's still so early, and that's why it's difficult to understand. I think if you look at the phase of it, go back to the internet. Internet happened. Everybody bought a .com. We knew it was a bubble. It popped, and then real building happened and did that. Same thing that you're seeing in Web3, right? Everybody was talking about this, spending money on, anybody could have dropped an NFT project, and then they crashed. Now is where the real things are being built and where the real opportunity lies. We've gotten through that first phase and that first challenge, so now is the best time than ever. And there's so many layers, whether you're a creator, whether you're a brand, whether you're just a hustler that wants to go in and sell advertising. Now is you'll look back on this time and wish you did more in it.
Love it. We're out of time, but it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. John, thank you.